In Captain America: Brave New World, released in February 2025, the film's final scene takes place in the Raft Marvel's high-security prison for its most dangerous minds. Samuel Stearns, known in the comics as the Leader, has spent the entire movie manipulating events from behind bars, using a mutated brain born from exposure to gamma radiation years earlier in The Incredible Hulk. Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, comes to see him one last time. Stearns doesn't gloat about his defeat. Instead, he delivers a warning. He says he's calculated the probabilities, and what's coming isn't a fight Earth's heroes have faced before. Other worlds exist, other heroes exist, and soon, this planet will have to be protected from them. At first glance, that sounds like a simple multiverse tease, something the MCU has done repeatedly since 2021. But here's the detail that changes everything. The film's director has since confirmed in interviews given after release that this scene wasn't just gesturing at the general concept of alternate universes. It was pointing specifically at the Illuminati, the Shadow Council of Heroes from a parallel Earth that audiences briefly met in 2022's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. If that's the direction Marvel is building toward, the entire shape of the story happening in Avengers, Doomsday and Avengers, Secret Wars gets a lot more specific. So the real question isn't whether the multiverse is under threat. We already know that. The real question is, what's actually causing it to collapse? And Marvel already answered that question 3 years ago. We just weren't listening closely enough. Here's what happened. In 2022's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we were shown, almost in passing, that incursions, the technical term for when two universes collide and destroy each other, happen for a very specific reason. One person existing in a universe that was never meant to hold them becomes the trigger. Their presence alone is enough to start tearing that universe apart. It's not a bomb. It's not a villain's master plan. It's just a person in the wrong place, existing too long. That film gave us two examples, back to back. The Illuminati's version of Doctor Strange had spent months dreamwalking through alternate universes, and multiple realities began collapsing around him as a direct result. Then we watched a version of Wanda Maximoff, one who had opened a third eye through the power of the Darkhold trigger, the exact same pattern in her own home universe. Same rulebook, same consequence, different person. Now, and this is the part worth sitting with, if Marvel is actually staying consistent with that rule, we can start predicting where the next incursions are going to happen. I want to be upfront here. Everything I'm about to walk through is theory, my theory, built from patterns Marvel has already put on screen. None of this has been confirmed by the studio, but it's worth laying out because it's genuinely how this kind of universe building tends to pay off. Earth 838, the Illuminati's universe, is a strong candidate for its own incursion. Doctor Strange spent an extended stretch of time there, and Wanda did considerable damage to that reality during her pursuit of America Chavez. By the internal logic already established, that universe is primed to collapse. There's a second candidate we've already glimpsed. At the end of Captain Marvel and in its own post-credits stinger, Monica Rambeau arrived in an alternate universe where her mother, Maria Rambeau, exists as a hero called Photon, and where Charles Xavier and Beast, straight out of the X-Men mythology, are alive and active. If that universe follows the same rule, it's a second reality already on borrowed time. And there's a third one hiding in plain sight at the very end of Deadpool and Wolverine. When that film's version of Wolverine chooses to stay behind rather than return to his own timeline, it sets up the potential collapse of whichever reality he's now occupying, which raises an obvious problem. If that Wolverine staying put is enough to doom a universe, why didn't the Time Variance Authority, the organization literally built to prevent this kind of damage, step in and stop it? There are two ways to answer that, and both are still theory. One possibility is that incursions aren't only caused by displaced people, they can also be triggered when a universe's anchor being, a foundational figure the timeline depends on, is removed. If that's true, an incursion could be the result, rather than a rule the TVA was ever equipped to police. The second possibility is blunter. Maybe the TVA simply doesn't understand the multiverse as well as it appears to. Every version of the organization we've seen was built and run by variants of one man, he who remains, who shared only as much information as suited him. It's entirely possible that once Doomsday and Secret Wars actually unfold, we learn the TVA has been operating on incomplete knowledge the entire time and needs help from actual heroes the moment a real threat appears, the same way it needed Deadpool's help to handle a single displaced variant. So here's where the theory turns toward our own universe, Earth 616, the one all the mainline Avengers live in. How does an incursion actually reach us? This is where Fantastic Four: First Steps becomes important, and not just as a fun new addition to the roster. That film's version of the Fantastic Four exists on a separate Earth from the mainline MCU timeline, that much is confirmed. What isn't confirmed, but fits the established pattern, is a theory that at some point, likely toward the middle or end of Avengers, Doomsday, that family ends up displaced into Earth 616. If they're fleeing their own dying universe, or simply become stranded here, they become the exact kind of wrong universe presence that the rules already established would put our own reality on an incursion collision course. Every universe under this theory needs a person responsible for its unraveling. The Fantastic Four crossing over would make them the trigger for ours, which brings us to Loki. And here's a theory worth sitting with. What if the person best positioned to stop all of this is also the one person who can't? By the end of the Loki series, Loki had taken control of the sacred timeline and deliberately let it branch freely, refusing to prune any reality in order to protect everyone's free will. If he now started cutting off branches to prevent incursions, he'd be contradicting the entire principle his character arc was built around, the thing he explicitly swore he'd never do again. So the theory holds that Loki, dramatically, has to sit this one out. He built the tree. He can't be the one who starts cutting it down. That's reportedly where Dr. Doom enters the picture, not as a Thanos-style final boss charging in to fight the Avengers, but as someone hunting for answers. This lines up with something Marvel already put in the comics. In the Time Runs Out storyline, the comic book arc that directly inspired Secret Wars, Doom's entire journey is built around searching for a solution once every other option has failed. If the film adaptation follows a similar shape, Doom's arc in Doomsday would involve him realizing that the center of the multiverse's collapse traces back to Loki, and that confrontation would be the true setup for Secret Wars, not the climax of Doomsday itself. Now here's where I want to bring in something the comics already showed us, because it changes what people expect from this story. Comic book quick note: in Time Runs Out, when the Avengers realize an incursion is imminent, they're given an 8-hour countdown before the colliding universe destroys everything. To guarantee their own universe's survival, they gather the Infinity Stones and hand them to Captain America, because his willpower is judged strong enough to resist their corrupting influence. Using every stone at once, Captain America manages to push the incoming universe away, but the stones shatter in the process, all except the Time Stone, which simply vanishes. Watching the other universe he destroyed, Steve Rogers refuses to do it again, and the Illuminati is forced to wipe his memory and search for another way. That another way eventually becomes Nothing Time Runs Out, exactly as the story is titled, and the heroes are left with no solution left to try. If Doomsday borrows any part of that structure, it reframes what people assume the film is building toward. Confirmed reporting has already stated that surviving Illuminati members from Earth 838, the ones we saw killed in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, are expected to factor into the story in some form. Theory-wise, it's reasonable to expect their survivors would be driven by revenge, arriving in Earth 616, not as allies, but as invaders. And if that happens, expect the film to split its cast. One smaller team may end up facing Dr. Doom directly and lose. The larger bulk of Earth's heroes would instead be fighting off the incoming universe's heroes, protecting their own planet, exactly the stakes Stearns warned about in that post-credits scene. Meanwhile, Doom keeps running his own arc in parallel, less interested in conquest and more interested in the same question Time Runs Out gave him. Why does this keep happening, and how do you make it stop? Theory says his search eventually points him toward a council of Kangs, believed responsible for a version of this chaos, and that dealing with them gives the franchise its resolution for the Kang storyline that Jonathan Majors' exit left unfinished. And when even removing the Council doesn't stop the Incursions, Doom is left with one option: build a battle world, a single merged reality made from the wreckage of everything collapsing. That, and not a straightforward Doom vs Avengers slugfest, maybe the actual endgame Secret Wars is building toward. So to bring this back to where we started, Stearns wasn't exaggerating. The others he warned about aren't a metaphor. They're specific universes, with specific people already responsible for their collapse, following a rule Marvel handed us quietly back in 2022 and never brought up again until now. So that's where the pieces currently sit, what's confirmed, and what I think connects it. I could be completely wrong about the theory parts, and honestly, I kind of hope Marvel surprises me. Which part do you think holds up? And which part falls apart the second the trailer drops? Tell me below, I read every comment on these. And if this kind of deep dive is your thing, you know what to do before you go.